You're listening to the Jōrni Podcast. If our beliefs decide what's possible, how do we know when it is really our circumstances holding us back and not the limits we have learned to live by? This episode contains adult subject matter and some listeners may be triggered by this content. Listener discretion is advised. Hi, I'm Petra Brunbauer, and with decades of experience with sadness, pain, anxiety, and stress, I finally figured out how to leave all that behind. And this podcast shows you how to break free permanently so you can reclaim your sanity and find the self-esteem and energy to go after the life you desire. With real talk about mental health, holistic healing, and the tough journey of coming out the other end. This is the Jōrni Podcast. Welcome to today's episode. The stories we grow up with can become invisible limits, guiding our choices long after we've outgrown them. This episode looks at how those early beliefs take hold and what happens when we finally begin to question them. Lawrence Harris is a speaker and author dedicated to helping teens and young adults break free from limiting beliefs. Through his powerful storytelling and lived experiences, he inspires audiences to embrace self-worth and growth. His message connects deeply with anyone ready to heal, rebuild, and rise above their past. Here is my interview with Lawrence Harris. Hi, Lawrence. It's so great to have you on the podcast today. I've been looking forward to getting to chat with you because breaking the cycle of limiting beliefs, I feel, is such a timely topic and really something that probably every listener can take something away from. So thank you for joining me today and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. And I look forward to it because, like you just said, everyone, for those who aren't aware of what limiting beliefs are, it is simply put, the thought of I can't. Something such as, I can't be the first millionaire in my family. That's a limiting belief. I can't lose 10 pounds. That's a limiting belief. I can't get that job or that relationship I want. That's a limiting belief. It is a belief that limits you from being able to achieve what you want.
Yeah. And if we unknowingly or subconsciously prescribe to these beliefs, they can wreak a lot of havoc in our lives. So I look forward to discussing this with you more and finding out what your perspective is. And for starters, Lawrence, can you share a little bit about yourself? Maybe the parts of your journey or your story that you feel are relevant to what you do today, what has brought you here, and share with our listeners what it is that you do today as well.
What brought me here to this point in my life, for those who are unaware, I'm currently at the time 19. And what I do is I'm a youth empowerment speaker and author. I help mainly teens and young adults improve their mental health, self-worth, and their outlook on life, which is a very big thing. But the thing that got me into this was growing up, up until the age of 11, didn't have friends because I was always different from those around me, and I couldn't figure out why. No matter how hard I tried, other kids just didn't like me. I would try to fit in, like I had to pretend to be someone I wasn't. And then at the age of 12, my dad became abusive to me and my younger siblings. So having to step up and protect them ultimately led me to the spot mentally of feeling like I was just never good enough, because shortly after, I got kicked out and had been living with my mom full time. So all those things stacked together led me to a lot of beliefs that I can't have healthy relationships because I didn't have them growing up. I can't have healthy friendships because I didn't have that. I can't make a lot of money because growing up, a lot of my family members were struggling financially. Never super in poverty, but never very wealthy. I'll put it that way. But in a lot of self-reflection and therapy and journaling and the practices I'm going to share today, it helped me to become aware of, why do I believe that? And then change that belief And by changing what we believe, we change our life because your beliefs are the rule book you live by.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can only confirm that. I know that you're still at the very beginning, let's say, of adulthood, but with me being a couple decades into that now, I absolutely agree. And many of the things that you have just shared, and thank you for sharing your journey and your story as well with us. I feel many of those things follow us into adulthood and they determine how we live, how well we live, what we allow ourselves to do, what we block ourselves from doing. So, a lot of these experiences that we have in early childhood or in childhood, they definitely don't end or disappear as we transition into adulthood. I find this an extremely interesting perspective that you're offering to our listeners from the perspective of a young adult. Because looking back at that, I'm sure that our listeners can identify with some of the things that you experienced as well, that they may have experienced in their lives, hardships, challenges, abuse, and the ripple effects that then come into adult life and what they do. Can you share with us a little bit of what you have found along this journey, how you're working with your childhood challenges to make a difference coming into your adult life now?
The way I've learned to use those challenges to help other people is since the age of 15, I made it my mission to go out there and help people to realize that they matter in this world. Because the reason I'm so passionate about teens and young adults in particular is that when you look at the mental health statistics, 33% of them are teenagers and young adults. And those are just the ones who get the help and get the information on because most people aren't taught to talk about it. And like you mentioned, those beliefs follow us into adulthood. You can look at a lot of your life. And if you just keep asking yourself the question of why, for example, let's say someone makes $100,000 a year. We'll use that as an example. And they ask themselves, why do I make $100,000 a year? And they go back far enough, that's probably the same amount of money their parents made. And then you adjust it for inflation, that's probably around the same amount that their grandparents made. And it's the belief that get passed down to us without us even knowing that will affect our life so dramatically. You can look at marriages as an example. The belief that we had when we were 15 years old and our ex-girlfriend or ex-boyfriend broke up with us in front of the school, which is something that actually happened to me. Those, if we don't heal that, we will look back on it when we're like 40, 50 years old and go, that was such a small, silly thing. But because you allowed that to affect the way you believe about your relationships, that ultimately, through a chain of events, led to a divorce. The belief that we had when we were young, they only build and they only start to get reshaped over time. And until we go in and deal with it, we can't change. And when I realized that a lot of my beliefs about my self-worth were based in being hurt by people, I realized, okay, do I want to continue believing this? No, I don't want to continue believing this. So how can I change this belief? First, you have to acknowledge the belief is there. Then you have to question, where did this come from? Where did this belief begin? Then you have to take action towards changing it, such as if you think that everyone is out to get you and they're bad and evil, which is something I used to genuinely believe, go out and start being nice to people. Because you'll realize if you're nice to people, more often than not, they will be nice back. Not everyone, but you'll start to see that there are kind-hearted people in this world. And now that you have evidence that says the bad belief is untrue, and you look at the evidence, your brain is going to try to keep confirming what it already believes. Because when you strip it down, your brain is like a giant pattern recognition machine, and its one job is to keep you alive. So these beliefs that we have, even the bad ones, even the worst belief we have, are ultimately trying to keep us alive somehow. But in our life, the beliefs such as I'm not worthy of a healthy relationship is not good for us, to put it plainly. So then you have to go out and also journaling. That helped me a lot. Journaling about, why do I feel this way? Why do I think this? What evidence do I have to confirm this? Is this belief realistic? Do I have evidence that says this belief is untrue? And when you do that for weeks, months, or depending on what the belief is, it might even take years, you'll change it. And once you change that belief, you will change that entire part of your life.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you're touching on something I feel is really important to maybe point out to our listeners is that it starts with an awareness. As you said, you have to become aware of the fact that there is a challenge, a problem, or a belief that is there in the first place. Because without that awareness, we can't really move to the solving stage. And that is, I feel, a really important part of working with limiting beliefs is to come to an awareness and actually an understanding that might be there. I find that is sometimes the thing that takes the longest. It's actually understanding that there is a limiting belief there because we take it as just something happening in life. As you mentioned, for example, if there's a divorce that happens, often we don't recognize that there is a limiting belief behind that. We just think it was a bad relationship or it didn't work out. So thank you for pointing that out. So I feel like that is a very important part of working with limiting beliefs. And how do you build that awareness, Lawrence? How did you build that awareness to come to that? You mentioned journaling. How can our listeners really incorporate and dig into to find out where these limiting beliefs might actually be living in their lives or might be sitting there interfering with their lives?
Firstly, pick an area of your life. So let's say for some people, they'll pick money. Other people, it'll be relationships. Other people, it will be job opportunities. Just pick an area of your life and then look at that area over a long span of time. So a couple months, couple years, decades even. And notice the pattern. For example, every relationship we get in, it ends within 3 months. When you were 15, this happened. When you were 16, this happened. 17, 18, 19, 20. Every relationship ends within 3 months. This is a pattern. That pattern is called by a belief. Okay, where did this belief come from? Also, why does this keep happening? Sticking with the example of relationships, it might be this person cheats on you, or you cheat on that person, or there's an argument. Now, you look back on your childhood and you say, where could this have came from? But most of our limiting beliefs happen in childhood. Growing up, you always saw your mom and dad arguing, and they would have this on and off relationship, which so coincidentally happened every 3 months. And you just didn't realize it because you never paid that much attention to the area. When it comes to money, you might have spent the last 20, 30 years working jobs or running a business, and you can never seem to get past $100,000 a year. You can, no matter what you do, no matter your marketing strategy, no matter your offer, no matter the product, you can never seem to get past this number. Why is that? Okay, you look at your life, you notice the pattern, and you ask yourself, where's this coming from? Growing up, your family told you that rich people are evil. And part of your belief system is, I don't want to be an evil person. So if I had a lot of money, that would make me a rich person. And you unknowingly believe that rich people are evil and you don't want to be evil. So you have to change your beliefs about money in order to get to that $100,000 mark. Because we will think that there's no way I would deliberately sabotage myself for making a lot of money, but that's not how your beliefs work. Your beliefs don't care how you feel about it. All they care is what's the belief. If you believe that rich people are evil, you won't become a rich person because you don't want to be evil. If you believe that all men are bad for you, all women are bad for you, you'll never find a good one because you will start only selecting the bad ones. Like I said, your brain is a giant pattern recognition machine. And if you tell it to only find bad, it doesn't care how you feel. It just cares, what am I being told? And if you have a belief that had been sitting there for 10, 15, 20 years, 5 years, however long, and you want to change it, you have to get very honest with yourself. It's going to be a bit of a painful process, very painful depending on the belief, because it's going to hurt a lot to say that my relationship issues are the result of when I was 5 years old, growing up, seeing my mom and dad. That's a painful thing to say. It's a very painful thing to say. The reason why I have trouble making money is because I was taught to believe that making money makes you a bad person. That's a painful belief. But if you just keep doing the work and you journal on it, which is what I tell most people to do, because assuming that you don't have the finances to get a trained therapist who specializes in this, which is pretty expensive, it's going to take some time and you're going to cry. There will be a lot of tears shed. But on the other side of the pain of acknowledging the belief is then creating a plan on what can I do. I can go watch, let's say the money example. If you wanted to change your belief that rich people are not all evil, you want to believe that rich people are not all evil, that way you can become a rich person. Go look at the podcast about billionaires who donate hundreds of millions of dollars to build wells in Africa. That's a pretty good action. Or the podcast or documentaries about rich people who are building churches, or the podcast or YouTube videos about the ones who are building schools and they're making hospitals and all these things. And your brain is going to say, oh no, they're just doing that so they can make more money and they can just look good for the cameras. That is possible, but that does not serve you. That belief does not serve you. If you want to become a rich person, you have to, at the minimum, accept that there are people in the world who are rich and are not scamming and evil and taking advantage of others.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I do think that we really latch onto what we want to believe in. So finding some of this evidence that there are other possibilities will give our brain different patterns to look for. So this is a really great thing for our listeners to try out and do with their own beliefs. And I'm also wondering, you mentioned this can be a hard journey, and I think a lot of listeners can relate to that when they try to work on beliefs, and I say try to because sometimes we don't actually change the beliefs until we're ready for that or the conditions are right. But how do you work with that uncertainty or maybe even that fear of change? Some of those beliefs, as you said, are incredibly difficult to look at and they're incredibly painful to look at. So how have you worked with any of the resistance or the hesitant approach or maybe the fear of actually changing and looking at these beliefs? Do you have any experience with that?
There are many ways I can take this. So first thing that comes to my mind is that your brain, like I keep saying, it just wants to keep you alive. That's its job. Keep this person alive, get them to reproduce. Every action that you take can be traced back to keeping me alive and get me to reproduce. Those are the only two things that your brain's job is. And the fear of change comes because what we know is familiar. We know what to expect if we keep living the exact same way. If you're in a bad relationship, you know it's bad for you. You're well aware this person is bad for you, but you know what to expect. You know exactly what to expect. Now, if you go somewhere that you know is better for you, like this person is loving, they're sweet, they're kind, they're respectful, you want this. But your brain doesn't want that because it's unfamiliar and it's scary and we don't know. So when it comes to that resistance, you have to, part of it was constantly remind yourself that the past isn't good for you. Like going back to what was familiar, even though it's comfortable, isn't good for you. In my experience, one of the main beliefs I talk about is when I used to believe that I was really worthless and unlovable. As strange as this is going to sound, there is an odd comfort in staying stuck because you know what is here. Tomorrow, you're going to wake up, you're going to feel sad, you're going to come home, you're going to cry yourself to sleep. You know exactly when, what, when, where, and why. But to start loving yourself again is unfamiliar and it's scary because now I have to acknowledge my feelings. I have to express my emotions to people. I have to do the inner work to get better. And that's scary because you have to acknowledge the thing that you're running from. So that resistance too is going to creep up. It's a constant thing throughout life because the resistance is just the pressure needed to change. I was talking about this a few days ago to someone, and I explained it like this. I'm sure everyone here is familiar with Newton's laws of gravity and whatnot. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. You want to go forward in your life, and by the laws of the universe, life will start to push you back. But there comes a point when you say, I'm not going to keep going back. I'm not going to allow this challenge to keep me stuck. And I'm going to push through this belief. And you'll make a little bit of progress. And you track the progress and you notice, wait, I feel slightly better today. I made $10 more this month than I made last month in my business. My book sold some copies. That means it is possible for me to make money in my business. And if it's possible for me to make money in my business, it's possible for me to get more money through my business. And then it's possible for me to get rich. And if I get rich, oh no, rich people are bad. But I don't have to be a bad rich person. I can use my money and support my family and my friends and donate to churches and feed children in Africa. So that means I'm not a bad rich person. Wait, there's probably other rich people who are not bad. And you realize that it's okay to change. The only things in life that are guaranteed are you are born and you will die. Everything between that is not guaranteed at all. It's not guaranteed that your Amazon package will come when it says supposed to. There's a very high chance it will, but it's possible that you're going to walk outside and get struck by lightning. It happens. There are people who die from falling pianos. It happens. There are people who are walking down the street and one of those 50-pound anvils falls on them. It happens. It's not guaranteed it's going to happen, but it's not guaranteed that it won't. So in your life, when it comes to these beliefs that we're holding on to, you have to spot them, acknowledge them, and actually, do I want to stay stuck? No, I don't want to stay stuck. Now you have made a commitment to yourself to get better. And that commitment could be as simple as being more generous and loving, because growing up, you were taught that you had to bottle up all your emotions and not talk about it. But that belief is the reason why you have bad friendships, because you're not being nice to people.
Yeah, I like those examples. Actually, you're right. There's no guarantees in life. We don't know what will happen. And we can take influence, at least, with how we show up in the world and how we show up with other people. So I love that, what you were explaining. I also feel it gives our listeners a bit of an opening to really take some steps in their lives and make some choices. We do have choices, as you said, as to, do we want to stay stuck? Do we want to keep believing? And a lot of the times we feel like we actually don't have any choices. This is just handed to us. It happens. We're a passive person in our lives, but it is good to remember and be reminded of that we have those choices and we can choose to keep taking on those beliefs. And as you said, these can come from generations far back. They don't have to even come from our lives today. They might come from our parents or our grandparents or family members. And we can choose to keep aligning with that or choose to have a new path. So I guess that's the $1,000,000 question, Lauren. So how do we actually then change these beliefs? How do we break that cycle of staying stuck in these beliefs and perpetuating them and feeling that safety, even though we want something different? How do we go about that?
What you just mentioned was so great. You just mentioned that we often believe that we don't have a choice. The belief that we don't have a choice is a belief. The people who believe that they can do something in their life believe they can do something in their life. And because they believe they can do something, they do something. The ones who believe they can't, believe they can't. And because of that, they don't. If someone believes that they are currently, let's make this a really dramatic example. Someone is currently 450 pounds, whatever that is in kilograms, it's probably like 200 kilograms something. They're very large. And they believe that I can lose weight. I can get healthy. I can get to a healthy body weight for my height and BMI and whatnot. So if you take that person and you take another person who's 450 pounds, and that person believes, I can't, I'm stuck like this. I'm going to always be fat. This is just my life. I'm stuck. And at the end of the year, one of them will be 400 pounds. The other will be 500 pounds. Because one of them believes I'm stuck on this path. The other one believes my path may be difficult, but I can do something. And you go another year and another year. And 5 years down the line, one person is 200 pounds. They've lost 200 pounds in 4 years. The other person is 600 pounds. So we first have to acknowledge the fact that we do have a choice. Everything that you do, you have a choice in. And you may say to yourself, I don't have a choice because I have to do this. I have to stay in this relationship. I have to stay at this job. I have to. Because you believe you have to. Now, yeah, you have to pay your bills. You have to have a way of paying your income. I'm not saying go out and quit your job just because you don't like it. What I am saying, though, is you have the choice to apply to another one. No one's saying that you have to stay with this specific company or this specific location or this specific business or this specific relationship. Obviously, don't divorce somebody just because you woke up on the wrong side of the bed. Talk about your problems. But if you tried everything, you tried talking about it, you tried couples counseling, you tried group therapy, you've tried meditation, you've tried everything. No one's saying you have to stay. No one's saying that you have to stay in this circumstance. Oh, I have this bad card I was dealt. Okay. There are people who have been dealt far worse cards than all of us. Unless you are in absolute severe poverty. And I'm the kind of poverty where like your house is burnt down, you're on the streets in the middle of a third world country, and there's a war zone going on. Unless that's you, you have a choice. Unless you wouldn't even be listening to this podcast if that was you. So if you're listening to this podcast, you have a choice. You have a choice on what you listen to. You have a choice in who you're friends with. You have a choice in who you marry. You have a choice in just about every area of your life. So to change our beliefs, the $1,000,000 question is believe you can. And in order to believe you can, the easiest way to do that is start doing stuff consciously and be aware that, okay, yeah, normally every day I take this route to work. I'm going to take a different route. Normally I eat this thing every day. I'm going to eat something different. Normally, I call my friend at this time of day. I'm going to call them 30 minutes later. Not because you are trying to deliberately act differently, but it's about proving to yourself you have a choice in your life. And if I can make choices about little things, now I'm going to start making choices about slightly bigger things. Okay, I have been at this job for the last 5 years, and I want to work somewhere closer to my house. I'm going to apply to a different job. That's one level that shows I have a choice in where I work. I can apply differently in my life. They didn't take another step. They just replied back to me. They responded. They said, we're interested. I'm going to take an interview there. Now you take the interview. And depending on the labor laws over in France or wherever people are listening to this, maybe you have to put in your 14 days notice to get that day off. So you put that in. You get your day off. I have a choice in taking time off. I have a choice in what I do, where I do it, when I do it, and how I do it with my life. Because the first step in changing any belief, whether it's small or huge, is the belief that you can. Because once you stop believing you can, you stop trying. And once you stop trying, you'll stop living because your life is your life. The things you do, you have to live with that. And people will try to convince you that they know the right way you should live and that they have all the answers. And they might have answers for certain things, but if their advice doesn't go well for you, you're the one who has to live with it. So you have to believe that instead of being that passive observer of your life, that you're the one in the driver's seat of the car. And the car is your life. The road is the journey that you have to go down. And it's up to you where you steer the thing.
Yeah, I like your reasoning. This is amazing. Listeners, here it is. Go and find some evidence in your life that supports the belief that you can. And whether that is in your relationships, in your finances, in your health, in your mental health, anything that we talked about today, if you want to believe that you can, go and find some things that support that. Take some micro actions. Let your brain know that it can start looking for that positive reinforcement. So thank you for sharing all of that, Lawrence. I found this very enlightening because it is one of the things that I think we struggle with most in life is making changes that stick. And yet you have brought this down to a very simple concept, and that is we have a choice. So I highly recommend our listeners try this out for themselves in their lives and see what happens in their lives with their own challenges when they start looking for evidence to support that they can. Now, I want to throw this back to you for a moment as well, because we are wrapping up the episode and I wanted to ask, how can our listeners connect with you, Lawrence, and how could they work with you? Do you have programs, services, any resources that you offer? What would you like to share with our listeners?
In terms of staying connected with me, all of my social media, so YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, are Lawrence, LAWRENCE, as in cat, dot empowers. Don't remember how to spell empowers off the top of my head, but I'm very easy to find on there. My books are on Amazon as well as in the description. My most recent one is called Made for More, where I go into my own mental health journey, what I learned, and several things are in there that will benefit people looking to improve limiting beliefs. The link specifically in this podcast episode is to my own website, and I handle all the order fulfillment there. So if you order it and don't receive it immediately, I will send it to you. I personally email the files. So if you order it on there and you're like, I didn't get it within 5 minutes, I don't have Amazon infrastructure. I have me, so bear with me. And as far as my high level stuff, if by some coincidence you happen to be a podcast host, school principal, or run a youth organization and you're looking for speakers, you can go to my website, lawrenceharris.com, click the button that says book me, and get in contact with me that way.
Amazing. And we will be linking to all of Lawrence's offerings in the show notes as well. So be sure to go there and see how you can connect with him. And if you would like to connect with the resource that he mentioned, Made for More, you can find that there as well. And I just want to thank you today, Lawrence, for spending this time with me and giving us all a little bit of a different perspective on breaking the cycle of limiting beliefs. And as we said, this is not just something we go through in our youth. This continues into adulthood. So thank you for sharing your wonderful insight and wisdom with us, and all the work that you do for sharing this with our younger generations as well, where I feel this will make so much impact as they are growing into adults as well. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you. And I loved it.
Amazing. I'm happy when my guests are happy. So thank you for that, Lawrence. And thanks for listening in today, everyone. This is, I think, our second to last episode of the year. So we're nearly closing out 2025. So I wish you all happy holidays where you are. And we will hear you in the next episode. Take care, everyone. Be well. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen in. If you enjoy the Jōrni Podcast, please support us by subscribing, sharing on social media, and leaving us a review. We appreciate you. And you can find more of The Jōrni on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and our website, thejorni.com. Sending you love and courage, and see you next time.